behind because I went out to get on.
Pieces of legislation, right?
Yeah.
And,
So, take long for that.
and then I'll tell you an extra thing once we get there.
Okay, well, today is Thursday, May 25th, and we are calling the legislative meeting to order. Present, Mayor Southard, sorry. Councilperson Camera, Councilperson Martin, Councilperson Wolf, Village Planner Fisher, and myself, Mark Ruger, Chair of the committee. Not much to go over on the legislative in general. We will get to short-term rentals after we get through our normal stuff. Maybe, because I know the council member who really is excited about short-term rentals and wants to go over them is not here.
She will be absent for the next meeting as well.
Okay,
She's stuck at work.
so we might have to do it without her. Why is my agenda not in the assistant update? There it's for, because I was looking at the wrong one. We get more than one email from the assistant. Okay, so let's look over what we're actually doing tonight. Legislation, resolution 2023-16. This is just second reading to get our permissive tax funds from Franklin County for the Minerva Lake Road project. I can't imagine anyone has anything they have to say about this unless they're curious as to how much money it's going to be and how much the project going in, but that's all questions around it, not about it. All right, and then same with the second one, the appointment of Sean Corley as the full-time school resource officer for the Village of Minerva Park and declaring an emergency. Now this is a first reading, looking to suspend the rules. This just makes the appointment, this is not him passing his
Correct. 6 months.
thing. This is something that we of course decided, mid last year we need to do, that once we hire them, we have to hurry up and say, yes, we officially hired them and they are part of us. Even if they don't make it through their 90 days, for those 90 days, they have to be
Yes.
on the thing.
And that's-
Those are the two that I had.
This is a new hire?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the resource officer. He's already gone through the Westerville interview process. He was already gone through all of our process. He's already gone through all of the Westerville process as well. So yes, it is for the resource officer for the middle school. So he will be doing training. He will be training with our officers, getting comfortable with the neighborhoods and comfortable with all of that. He will be riding in the car. He will be doing a regular FTO. I don't know if it's completely regular, but he will be riding with our lieutenant, our sergeant, our other officers over the next couple weeks. And then as well, he will be placed in the school. So he has already done all of his interview process through, which is a couple more steps than our normal officers have to do.
Gotcha, and I don't know if this is an appropriate question to ask or not, but I will, and then we can just say, ew, that's personal. Does he have a background, does he come to us from another agency, or is this first law enforcement job?
He comes to us from another agency, and then as far as anything in the past or anything like that, I mean, here's what I would say. He goes through our hiring process,
Yeah.
we do all of our
I was
backgrounds
just wondering
and
if he was experienced or if he was out of the academy. I
he
guess.
he is experienced,
Okay.
he does come from, gosh, I wish I could tell you where, I don't remember.
Okay.
So yes, he is an
I mean,
officer,
that's-
he's not brand new.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Hi.
Brian's not here.
Chipper?
He will be downstairs, yes,
Okay.
or yeah, in the music room here, probably in about 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, you're
Not a
good.
problem. Okay,
So
I
yes.
mean, as I say, I assume, especially when you said through our hiring process,
Correct.
Westerville's, I'm not saying that Westerville's is better or more thorough than ours, but they're hiring for a police officer to put in one of their middle schools.
Yes.
So I imagine they do a pretty thorough check on that, cause
Yes,
police officer in a middle school.
yes.
Yeah, got it.
And then we used to do these as emergencies, this is the way it was always done, and then we had a couple, council people that decided that's not the way they wanted to do it. And with asking Jesse, this is the way it should be done according to our law, director, this is like you had already stated, so this is why we're back to doing it this way, this is what was recommended from our law firm. And then I'm gonna, if I can have 30 seconds just to let you guys know some legislation that's coming, just so it's not a surprise, cause I
We
don't.
have half an hour left in this meeting.
Well, I know we wanna talk about a couple things. There is going to be, and it just came to our attention today, I was gonna try to throw it on, but I didn't wanna do that to everybody. But you may be asked to waive readings or do certain things. With the completion of the community building, August, September, I don't wanna say August, I don't wanna say September. Our lease is up in September, as you guys are aware. We want to extend it through October 31st to be on the safe side, which now we have to make that decision. We can't make that decision 2 weeks before. So they reached out to us today to find out what we're doing, if we are evacuating or not. We would like to make the decision to go ahead and extend it through October 31st. Legislation that you guys passed previously, we don't feel comfortable. We want to bring you additional legislation and you guys to pass that additional month. So that is gonna be coming. I don't know if we're gonna need to do it as an emergency. I would assume that we need to let them know, and we're not gonna let them know until you guys approve it. So expect that coming, and again, I just don't want it to be a huge surprise thrown in your face and me not be able to explain what we're doing or why we're doing it. So we're looking, it's just the 1 month through October 31st. And that also gives us time if the furniture gets delayed or anything like that still comes up. There's a lot of reasons.
It seems reasonable,
Yes.
just for the sake of the record. How much would it be for an additional 1 month there? Do we know?
I don't-
Breakdown on that?
I don't know exactly. Have you heard?
I double checked with your lease, I mean, it's the same, what are you paying right now?
I have, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I just walked in the door earlier today.
Yeah, same did I. So, if I may, real quick, so I think you can probably get them started on their legislation at this next meeting, right,
Exactly.
which is in June. If we tell the landlord that it's moving through our process, they'll
Yes.
hold it, I think, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt that.
Right.
But to sign it or anything, we'll make sure that so we'll get with you guys on that. I just wanted to let you know it's coming, so it's not a huge surprise.
Gotcha.
And even if we, cause if it's for the month of October, right, even if we started readings with the first regular meeting in June, it's read by the first meeting in July, it's in effect, what's August 1, or
Right.
August, the first,
You classify emergency then, so that way she can
Correct.
sign
yeah,
it, whatever.
yeah, we
Yeah,
we
but
could
the point
potentially,
being, I
but
think what Councilperson will say is,
we could do
even
it.
if
may
we
not have
do, even if we do it normally, we can even tell them mid-July, look, it's passed, it takes 30 days to go into
Right.
effect. No one's putting this on the ballot, we're pretty sure,
Yeah.
right?
But we can
will be
discuss
there.
emergency or not as we
Correct.
get closer, but certainly waiving readings shouldn't be.
No big deal at that point.
Right. And again, just bringing it up to you guys because it came up today, just so it's not a huge surprise. I just want everybody to kind of know, what's going on and how it's happening. And I think that was the only. I think that was it.
Cool.
All right, so I guess we're looking at short-term rental. Did everyone look at the sample language we had from Dublin and whatnot?
I scanned it.
Right.
I don't believe that we have enough of this or enough of a problem with this that I think it's worth us engaging in this legislation. That is my opinion, right? I think that the kind of problems that may come up from people with short-term rentals where people are loud or destroying property, we have other codes on the books for noise control, right? People are obviously responsible for their, they have their own liability for property damage, like none of that changes with a short-term rental. I don't, the larger concern that people talk about with short-term rental of, it's all gonna turn to short-term rental and then it drives up property values and nobody can afford to live there anymore. I just don't see that as a risk in Minerva Park. This isn't, in the greater Columbus area, maybe the Short North might experience that, maybe German Village might experience that. Tourists aren't coming to Minerva Park to for our good access to the freeways and, big trees.
We're so close
think-
to Easton and,
Well, look, I'm not saying there aren't amazing reasons to be here. I just don't think there's short-term rental reasons to be here.
I think the other thing is that if the Ohio legislature is so close to passing something, why would we spend our time.
maybe if whatever they do is so atrocious that we need to respond in some way, but I can't even imagine what that would be.
Because aren't they leaning towards just you can't restrict it? It's-
And so that's gonna be, that's the, as you know, most of the legislatures are non-municipal legislatures, and they like to stick it to the municipalities,
Right.
because there's a constitutional allotment for home rule here, and that'll be immediately appealed, it'll take years to work itself through the system
Right.
regardless, so.
And I guess if that is what happens, and then, that would just be another reason to charter up and then try our best to engage in our own home rule.
Yeah, we would be a little more restricted as a statutory authority, so
Correct.
that's part of the fun.
I think it'll be interesting to see whether or not, and this is, whether or not they can do that, because I would bet almost anything, the majority of the people that have bought in the new, and go through your paperwork and look, in closing documents, that is an actual document that people sign as part of their mortgage, especially with FHA. There is now a new document that you must sign that you will not use your property for Airbnbs. It specifically says short-term rentals Airbnb. That is a new not a new document, it's been probably for the last 3 years. That is a document that people do sign. I have watched it many times, that is part of your mortgage that you are signing off on, because it is a risk for them.
Different risk profile if it's a business
Correct.
property than.
Correct. But it is a specific Airbnb. It is a specific short-term Airbnb document. And I will look for it for the next meeting, just so you guys are aware, because it is a problem. It is definitely a problem for people. It is something that, if we're not allowed to legislate it, we're not allowed to legislate it. And obviously there's
What is the problem?
Single owners aren't gonna typically be doing this, this is run by groups of investors.
a lot of it is.
Yeah,
A lot of
they
them are.
buy it without bank money.
Right.
And again, they're not interested, from experience, they're not interested in attracting attention either. So it's just, even if you had that happen with a guy that buys 1 or 2 houses, and they're usually not the ones to do that because they're not gonna pay retail value for houses, they're looking again from an investment standpoint houses for a different price point, and you don't have that necessarily here. So it's just one of those things where I don't disagree with Councilman Wolf. We haven't seen any evidence of this yet in Minerva Park as being a major problem. It's one of those things that I would definitely think it's useful to consider what's in front of you. And from a technical standpoint, there's a lot of good definitions in the, Dublin work that was done a few years ago. And then the good thing is Jesse's firm is currently doing Pickerington's, and I think Pickerington's shorter and sweeter way of handling it is perhaps what you would see here, just easier and simpler to implement. Dublin's just big and.
Well, I would assume Dublin has a big need to do it for things like the Memorial Tournament. Airbnbs don't have as many restrictions on rentals, meaning a lot of 18-year-olds can do it. And the part with Airbnb is it's not a problem until it's a problem. And if you don't legislate yourself, and that's the whole point of legislation, period, is you're trying to restrict people. And there's certain legislation that I look at, like, why did we do this? For that one instance that it may happen. And if you actually want to take the time and Google some of the stories, and this is local in Columbus, it is with the kids that are typically with the 18, 20-year-old kids that are going in and renting, having these blowout parties, which, again, we have a great police force, don't get me wrong, they can go in, shut it down, and do all of that.
To me, that's not a problem to me.
Right.
That's a problem to the homeowner who decided to do it, who might have a trashed house and now has to fight an 18-year-old kid to pay damage.
Good luck with that.
That's a problem for our police officers to come and break, and I don't mean that in a let the cops deal
Right.
with it, but I do mean it in it's a wild party. Good thing we have police
Right.
who can show up at a wild party and say, kids, it's over.
But
Get
you can
out."
do that with a parent just going out of town too. So I'm not
Yeah.
oblivious to both.
There are other, for the purpose of airing out what other problems there could be, right? Sometimes Airbnbs or short-term rentals are hired for a day and scammers use that as a location to, drop, goods or currency, right? Maybe, but I don't see this as a neighborhood that they're targeting for that either, right? Human traffickers may engage a short-term rental to house their product to be less than discreet, and have activities of that nature. you know, that would maybe be something to control against, but I don't even know.
How any of this would prevent that, because if there's just, you have to have a permit, this and that, none of that's gonna prevent someone quietly going to the house and doing something untoward
Right, right.
that doesn't bother the
Right,
neighbors.
as
Well,
provided there is a path to allow it, that's still a possibility.
Well, the other, I mean, and this is where I flip over, you would have to have somebody that's actually monitoring it. And I will tell you, we already do have a property that gets listed on an Airbnb site in the village.
Okay,
No, I'm saying,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter,
yeah.
it's one of those things that who's going to monitor it? It's not a problem until it's a problem.
Right.
This particular house had a lot of traffic going through it, which is how we figured it out. And it's not, it's actually, they rent more to, OSU students. So, and actually, I think there's two, well, maybe the one's not doing it, I don't know. But they're both on my street, and that was just one of those, and it happened, somebody else brought it to our attention, and then we realized what was going on. Now, that said, she wrote in a letter, and she basically said that's how she pays her mortgage payment.
yeah.
So I'm, again,
These
I'm,
individual rooms, if I remember correctly.
yeah, she has like
So
individual,
she has like a boarding house situation.
correct,
Oh,
so,
that's not
but,
nice, I hope she gets there, goes boys tea in the morning.
yeah. And again, it doesn't like, I will tell you, those are the that's the traffic that we see of the people that don't care, that do speed up and down our street, cause I know the specific cars. So those are the little things that you see from them, but I don't know who is actually going to monitor it. You're not gonna know if it's an Airbnb situation next door unless you're literally sitting there staring out your window trying to see how many that's not me, I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was
Which to me
one
kind
there.
of points to the not really a problem, if it can go on
And you
it's
don't
next door to
know.
me and I don't notice it, that is not a problem for me.
Right, and so that's what I'm saying, so if you have one that's just doing it and it's never a problem, then why are you telling them that they can't do it? I mean, if that's how they're paying if they're in Florida for half the year or something like that, and that's how they're paying their mortgage payment, what are you going to, you would have to figure out how to do, what is short term? I mean, is 3 months short term? If you're renting it out for 3 months while you're in Florida, I mean, why can't, I'm not arguing it either way. I'm saying these are what the problems are. These are why people are trying to do it. I understand the reason that she's bringing it, because there was just a shooting in Columbus at an Airbnb from a party, like literally within the last 2 or 3 weeks. Which is not the first one. It happens every prom, spring break,
But is the shooting because
Correct.
it's at an
Not-
Airbnb or because it was a party?
party. I would,
Because it was a rented.
right. I would assume it's just the party, so I'm not here to, I'm saying that's why it was brought to everybody's attention, and once again, you can be proactive or reactive. And that's why it was brought in, and it's up to you guys to decide, and if you can't legislate against it, there's nothing you can do anyways.
Before we say anything about it, are we allowed to table this until Stacy gets here to?
Oh,
say
yeah.
what she has to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think it-
She has to say
I
before have an
assume she'll
opinion.
bring it back up.
Oh, yeah.
no matter what,
We
so-
have a work session coming up.
On the first.
Right.
I think, well, maybe next week.
It is next week,
Next
yeah.
week.
Part of me wants to say
That I will
like,
not be at, I think I already emailed
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
about
So
that.
she could listen to the comments, she can prepare her own comments. You know, this is just, what we're doing here is we're considering something to add to the zoning code before we put the zoning code in.
Yeah,
before
we know that. I guess the thing is, obviously, Councilperson Wolf's made his thing. The most I'd be like, oh, if you wanna do it, you have to have a permit, so we know who's doing it.
That's what I was gonna say.
That'd be about as far as I'd wanna go, like, if you want to rent out your house, you have to come and spend $20 or whatever, I mean, and that's like what I would charge for it. I'd be like, yeah, it's a $20, cause we're not gonna, are we gonna do an inspection to make sure it's nice? No, we just want you to register
Right.
that, yes, your house is being used as, and if we even just wanna say that way, when there's different cars there, this or that, no one, people go, oh yeah, that's the place that rents themselves out, that's why there's different people there every week. We don't have to waste our time knocking on the door and saying, excuse me, who are you and do you live here?
that's kind of a good
So
idea.
But even at that, I mean, the second part to that is, and I'm just gonna be a jerk here. There could be somebody that lives there that has a random person come stay in their house for a couple nights here, a couple nights there, a couple nights
Yeah, so
here.
Yeah, I know, but
I would
if
throw
there's-
out there that if there is an appetite to go that route, I think the fee should be more, because it is about a business, right? And commerce should pay their freight, and B, there should be an inspection, because now, if we are making people raise their hand and say, I am running a short-term rental, we should, I feel it's our obligation to certify that that short-term rental meets the safety standards that there are. So is there proper egress, is there appropriate smoke detection,
Is
fire
it
suppression?
ADA compliant.
Right, so
You're right,
either-
we shouldn't permit. People should
Either
just do
we're in it
yeah.
or we're not.
Yeah.
If I may, so I'm gonna take a little bit different angle on this, so, okay, wanna do some inspections, so inspecting a site for a certain amount of detectors, a certain amount of this, certain amount of that is more of a fire building code standard, right, depending on what one inspect. We aren't doing it for home inspections, which could be a variety of different uses, because it gets into all kinds of things. I would want to hear Jesse's take on this a little bit, because I really don't want to put either any of our staff in a position which there may not be eminently qualified for passing this on,
Right.
because I don't know.
Which is
you know,
yet another problem.
Right, we aren't CBOs, we're
Right.
not in building inspectors with fire
Yeah.
code certification, that concerns me a little bit to do that. I think I would rather handle it without Jesse opining, I mean, regardless, making it as simple as possible to have them registered so that we know who they are, you know? And that way, that lets you, people who aren't registering are trying to be under the radar, and you'll find out one way or the other if you're having problems anyways, right? So, it just, it adds a load of.
Right. But I think
would
the
be-
other- but then-
I would be concerned that if we have them register and then we don't certify that they are meeting, cause I'm pretty sure there are state statutes around safety requirements for rented
Well,
space.
We'll have to look into that, it's a good question.
Right, and
We don't do it
if
for
we're
any of our
not
own.
certifying that,
So would it
then,
fall on property?
then I don't think we are fulfilling our duty.
But is there a difference between well, I mean, I guess what is considered short-term versus
Right.
long-term? Because
So-
No, I
rental
think-
properties are
If you've got a
fine.
house, if I've got, as you know, if I've got a house and I've got to rent it for usually a year or 6 month lease, right? It's typically what
Right.
we see out there.
Which we know that there are those, we
Right.
know,
There are
yeah.
plenty of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what someone's doing, hey, I need to move, I can't sell my house in this particular environment, I'm gonna just rent it, right? And off I go to my next job, so that pays the mortgage and I can move on to New York, wherever we go for my
Right.
job, okay. That case, the house is required, I mean, the liability is upon the current owner.
Right.
They're responsible for making sure that the residence meets the residential building code. In that case, you just have to have your smoke detectors, your doors function properly, windows function properly, you know, it has all those normal things. Airbnbs, I would assume, if I'm renting a whole house, you know, I'm not talking about a sublet
Right.
situation or a demarcated situation with apartments, right? Separate.
Sometimes they rent just individual rooms.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's a different issue, if that person's kind of a unique situation, I haven't been in that house, I don't know how she's demised the rooms, I don't know if they all have individual smoke detector, she probably has to do all of that, right?
But we're
Same
not
thing-
monitoring that, who
Right,
would be
no,
monitoring it?
No, it's right, no one's monitoring that situation, if somebody rents, if a homeowner rents out their house, we don't inspect
No.
them,
So-
right?
But even
Franklin
Columbus doesn't,
County-
does anybody?
Franklin County has a rental property
Right,
registry,
just a registry.
which opens them to inspection. They, as part of their registration, they have to agree that they are open to
Okay.
I've
inspection.
never known anyone to be, you're right about that, but.
Whether they are or not.
They
doesn't
don't do
mean-
inspection, because what that happens is the Franklin County Building Department will go and inspect if there's a problem.
Right, okay.
So, and it would be, since Franklin County Building Department is our,
Mm-hmm.
you know, building department for our residential folks, I'm assuming we would be the ones to call upon them to come and do an inspection, it won't be us.
Right.
All right, well, it looks like we're to the point in this discussion that we're waiting for Stacy's opinion and or perhaps Jesse's. So I suggest we move past
Yeah.
this one.
Can I ask one thing though?
Certainly.
Can we get the determination between like the Airbnb short-term versus, because again, you can rent your house for 6 months, 3 months, a year, what do we care about?
I think
And
if
maybe-
you read, so what I would recommend on what, and I know you and I both been out for a week, but what I'd recommend is you look at
Okay.
the definitions as provided, and Dublin's very thorough in there,
Okay.
purposefully. Look at how they define it,
Okay.
and it'll give you some idea of what they're saying.
Okay.
And it's more about the short-term week, few day rentals versus, because
Right.
when you get into the months,
Okay.
you're doing what a normal homeowner would do under certain circumstances.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I would be worried about anything 2 days or less. That's probably the biggest risk,
Yeah,
right? That's a person who's barely gonna leave a footprint. They're gonna come and, like, that's your biggest risk of nefarious activity, I think.
I think the only time you're gonna, I don't think, I would agree, I don't think there's any of that really going on in here now, I think it's more about being proactive than reactive is the whole conversation is, do we want to do it, do we not want to do it? And what can you even do? I don't know that you can.
Yeah. All right, I think the call to move on and wait for Councilperson Costa to
Yep.
opine or weigh in. Yeah, and what's next? Anything?
That was what's on, I mean, that's tonight's legislative agenda for the meeting, that was the one, code that was brought
Seems like
up.
Mr. Fisher's got.
Well, David was trying to ask a question, what was your question here earlier, I want to come back to you.
I guess my question was, I guess, to get back into the context, if we're not inspecting anything, which again, seems like it opens quite the legal can of worms, if there should be something happen, wouldn't that just be the, fault of the property owner, like with any other home?
Right, it would come back on
And I
that.
think
I
what-
I figured, I just.
And I think what Brian's point was, if we say, we have permitted and licensed this place to do this, then it assumed, there could be a, well, you said it was safe and it wasn't, it's the village's
We're
fault.
not gonna necessarily say it's safe, we just want them as, especially when
Yeah.
we get back to home occupation, we want them to register that
Well,
they're doing this work, so we know who you are.
Yes,
Right.
but that
It's
is
fine.
perhaps the difference
Doesn't
between
say-
registering and permitting.
We expect you as a, and we can disclaim this whole meeting, we expect you to follow whatever regulations are required in your field, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I just feel like if we are even just registering, I feel that puts a moral obligation upon us to certify that beyond, right? I also feel like that's the difference between a small community like ours, right? Because we're small and, you know, our word should be our bond, and if we've noted that, hey, we know this thing is going on, we should also know that it's being done appropriately and safely. But that's an opinion, and I am only one of six.
I do have a follow on it, so do you feel about the short-term rentals in the residential sphere? Well, what about all of our other home occupations in that regard?
We should also, right, I don't know what the standard is there, right, we
Wide
are,
ranging.
huh?
It's wide ranging, because we have so
Yeah,
many
but I
different
think that if we are providing permit for home occupation, if I understand that correctly, we should be certifying that it is safe for home occupation.
Now,
If we are
daycares,
not, then that's a
Daycares are different,
problem.
we
Correct.
can require them to go through the same.
but they have to, do they not?
I think they changed the law a few years back, I know when this came up in past communities I served, we had to make people, require them to go from the voluntary to the we mandated they go through the voluntary process.
Okay.
If people had under 6 children, whatever the rule was
Right.
at the time, they didn't have to do it.
Okay,
We had
that's
problem
what it is.
houses with
Okay.
that situation.
People with under what?
Well, for example, if
6 kids.
the old law, we have problems in other communities where, really bad situations where our officers are like, listen, I don't know how this is happening, we go in there, it smells like cat pee, and, you know, the kids are crawling on the floor, and they're like, this is terrible, and I'm like, so when we looked into it, you know, these folks who had under 6 children, or whatever maybe the 7, I don't remember the exact number, but
It's 6.
yeah, 6. So they did not have to go through the state's, the
Right.
state has a regulation where they'll certify your house. But if you're under a certain amount, they were exempting.
Was
you
this for
from-
a daycare?
For a daycare out of your
Yeah.
house.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
That's
Okay, that's a
that was the
different-
part of
Correct.
this that
Yeah.
you that not let in, and we were like.
He knew what I was talking about, cause we've
Yes.
talked about, like,
Yeah.
the and there's also things with like adoptions and different things,
Right.
like,
Right.
the
Certify,
fire department will come in and
okay.
certify, like, that the
Yeah.
working detectors and all that, I think that's who still does it.
Right.
Yeah, but, yeah, I haven't really said mine, other than I said, like, if we did anything, maybe a registration, perhaps not permitted registration is better, but, no, I don't think this is a problem or issue that I really think we need to put into code.
All right, well then,
Anyone with anything else?
Did I miss anything at the beginning?
Nope, we started late anyway, cause I was late.
Is it possible we can consider a 6:30 start time?
We can consider whatever we want, if you say 6:30 works better for you, and we can do
Yeah,
6:30.
6:30, it's just cut and it's super close every
Yeah.
single time, I don't wanna do that to you guys.
I'll tell Barb tonight to make the next one 6, and I think the next one's already on the calendar, but we can change it. 4 or 5.
Absolutely.
We move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.